Hi, I'm Jeff from New York. Please like and subscribe.
Episode 54, Undercover.
Are you sure? You almost died. Don't you hold Kenneth responsible at all?
Virgilio asked Jeff. Jeff looked at his grandfather seriously in the eye and said,
Not at all.
He shook his head and continued.
Even if I died, it wouldn't have been Mr. Stokes's fault. His responsibility is to help the Florento family manage the business and take care of the East Coast. Direct affairs, not my safety. Punishing Mr. Stokes isn't only unfair, it'll also unsettle and demotivate everyone who works for us.
This surprised Virgilio, and he started to wonder if he was getting too old to run his family business empire. His brain worked more slowly now, and he hadn't thought everything through clearly. He feared that he no longer had the vigor that had defined his youth. Virgilio laughed and replied,
Good for you. I agree with you. And I'll do as you say. I won't punish Kenneth Stokes.
Thank you, Grandpa.
Kenneth had been fetched back to the room. It took him a few seconds for him to digest the news and react. He kept bowing to Virgilio and thanking him. Then he turned to Jeff and said,
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much for your compassion.
After resolving the issue with Kenneth, Virgilio let him leave. Then he turned to Jeff and said,
You're a good boy, and you've grown so tall already. You only came up to my chest when you left home.
Virgilio helped Jeff up with a gratified expression. Jeff's feelings were mixed. He started to speak.
Grandpa.
He looked carefully at his grandfather. He noticed that his grandfather had become old. The wrinkles on his face had increased, and his gaze was no longer as sharp as when he was young. Hearing the words grandfather, the elderly man felt joy in his heart. He sat with Jeff at the table and asked him about his injuries and all about the last 7 years. He said to Jeff,
Now that you've passed the poverty test, you don't need to study at Peston University anymore. I'll send you to an internationally renowned school to study. Tell me, New York University. Yeshiva. Which university do you want to attend?
Jeff shook his head with a faint smile. He replied,
I feel that Peston University is pretty good. I'd like to continue studying there.
His grandfather disagreed.
At Peston, child. You must understand that in the future you will inherit unimaginable wealth. Your older brothers are already studying in the most outstanding universities abroad. Do you really want to stay in a place as small as Peston University?
Who said that a first-rate university abroad would suit me better than Peston? At least I don't think it would.
Jeff shrugged. Virgilio was satisfied with Jeff's answer. He responded,
Good, you have guts. You are indeed my grandson.
The grandfather and grandson talked for more than an hour at the Bayview restaurant before Jeff took the initiative to leave. He knew that Virgilio came to see him, but also that his grandfather managed the affairs of the whole family and must be extremely busy. Virgilio stood in front of the window, looking at the scenery in the distance with a self-satisfied smile.
You seem to be especially pleased with Jeff. Do you like him more than your other grandsons?
The man behind Virgilio asked him respectfully. Virgilio was slightly startled. He had never thought about it before. He slowly looked at the man.
Benjamin, you've been by my side for almost 10 years. What do you think of Jeff?
Jeff is modest and loves his girlfriend. He doesn't pursue power or fame. This is the difference between him and your other grandsons. It's also his advantage.
Benjamin bowed slightly as he spoke.
Advantage?
Virgilio asked with a faint smile.
Forgive me, I said too much.
Benjamin said with humility.
Oh, you don't have to be afraid. There's nothing you can't say to me.
Virgilio's gaze turned outside the window again.
I'm very aware that my body is getting old in the next few years. I will definitely have to choose my successor as the head of the Florento family. Jeff does indeed have an advantage in terms of personality and quality, but there's still time. No one can really predict what will happen in the future.
Leaving the Bayview restaurant, Jeff had headed straight for Lelane's room. By this time, Matthew and Lelane had gotten to know each other quite well. The cheerful Matthew was impressed with her. Seeing that Lelane had finally woken up, Jeff was pleased.
Jeff, where did you find such a delightful girlfriend? Tell me so I can go find one too.
Matthew grinned as he asked Jeff, while Lelane smiled shyly. If not for the fact that Lelane was already Jeff's girlfriend, Matthew would have done his best to get Lelane for himself. It took another 20 days for Jeff and Lelane's injuries to heal completely. Matthew had only been with him on the island for a week, but he had started feeling restless and lonely and decided he needed to leave the island and get back to his life of boozing, partying, and women. That day, Jeff and Lelaine also agreed that they should leave the island and return to school. In a private helicopter, they flew across the sea toward New York.
This month has been like a dream. I didn't expect your family to be so big.
Lelaine said as she looked at the clouds outside the window.
I told you before, you just didn't believe me.
Jeff said with a smile. After recuperating on the island for the last month, Lelaine's face had filled out. She was still wearing her beige dress and looked even more beautiful. At 6 in the evening, the helicopter slowly landed on the helipad. Jeff pulled Lelaine to the roadside and looked for a taxi to take them back to school. Just as he was flagging one down, his phone rang. The screen told him that it was Luis Brooks, one of Kyle Sanchez's assistants from the Berkeley Hotel. Mr. Florento, I heard that you've left Emerald Island. Have you arrived in New York yet?
Yes, we just landed.
Jeff replied. Luis continued. Good. The East Coast Division Manager of Foreign Trade, Abraham Sterling, wants to treat you to dinner at the Golden Mansion Hotel tonight. Last time, when Mr. Stokes invited you to dinner, he was away visiting the United Kingdom and was unable to join you. He only returned yesterday. Jeff thought for a few seconds.
All right, then. I'll go this time. But I don't really want to have to attend these social events right now.
In the future, if he wanted to join his family's management team, this kind of social interaction would be necessary. But he wasn't at that level yet. He didn't want to waste too much time on this kind of thing. Excellent. I'll inform him now and I'll send you his phone number. After ending the call, Jeff pulled Lelaine into a taxi and they headed straight for the Golden Mansion Hotel. The taxi pulled up in front of the hotel and Jeff and Lelaine climbed out. They noticed quite a few luxury cars pulling up at the entrance. The doorman, wearing formal attire, was opening the door for the owners of the vehicles. Jeff listened to a few of the customers as they passed and learned that they had all been invited by Abraham too. Jeff frowned slightly. He had assumed that the meal would just be for him, Lelaine, and Abraham. He hadn't expected so many people to be invited. He stepped to the side and called Abraham, asking him to come out and speak with him immediately. A few seconds later, a middle-aged man in a smart suit came out of the hotel. When he saw Jeff, he walked over with a smile. He had seen Jeff's photo before and recognized him without any difficulty.
Jeff, you've come. Come in, please. I've arranged everything. And I've invited some of New York's elite business owners to welcome you here.
Abraham said with a shy smile, even smiled at Lelaine, who was beside Jeff. That made Lelaine nervous. Abraham had never come into direct contact with anyone from the Florento family, so he felt very honored that Jeff had accepted his invitation. He thought that Jeff would surely appreciate the opportunity to meet so many important people. His only concern was that Jeff would think that he had not invited enough people to be worth his time, so he was still a bit anxious. As they were speaking, a gentleman who had climbed out of a luxury car saw Abraham and walked over.
It's a great honor, as always, that you've invited me to your party. Who's this?
The young man had seen Abraham bow toward Jeff and greet him with a respectful smile. He could not figure out who this young man was.
This is...
Abraham cleared his throat, but just as he was about to introduce them, Jeff beat him to it.
Nice to meet you. I'm Jaden Miles.
Jeff extended his hand toward the man. If he had been well known in New York, hiding his identity would have been impossible.
Jaden Miles.
The man looked puzzled. He had never heard of such a person.
What do you do? Never mind that. The guests are all here. You should hurry up and join everyone.
Abraham had been carefully observing the situation. When it was clear that Jeff didn't want to reveal his real name, he had immediately stepped in to help him. The man left with an apologetic smile.
Jeff, did I invite too many people this time?
Abraham asked.
What do you think?
Jeff asked with a smile.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you wanted to keep a low profile. I'll get rid of them all at once.
As he spoke, Abraham started to head back into the restaurant to ask all the guests to leave.
Come back.
Jeff called for Abraham to stop. He said kindly,
Since everyone's already arrived, let them stay. Just please don't invite everyone next time.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Jeff.
Abraham said as he led Jeff and Lelaine into the hotel. Abraham had booked a 3,000 square foot banquet hall, and it was full of guests. Jeff let Abraham entertain the others as he and Lelaine walked to the bar. Jeff and Lelaine were casually eating at the bar when they overheard one of the guests saying,
I heard that Mr. Sterling called so many of us here as a welcome feast for an important young gentleman. Who do you think is worthy of the boss's attention?
It can't be Henry Starks, right?
His companion replied.
Impossible. The news said that Starks is currently on holiday in Hawaii.
The first man answered.
Whoever it is, it'll be someone like Starks. I'm sure we'll get a chance to take a good look at him later. We should take the opportunity to meet important people like him.
Lelaine secretly smiled at Jeff.
Do you still want to hide your identity? It sounds like this Abraham has already told everyone about you.
Jeff could only grimace. While everyone was chatting, Abraham walked to the front of the stage and said into the microphone,
All right, please take a seat, everyone.
The guests began to look for places at the table to sit. Unfortunately, there were no fixed seating arrangements because the banquet had been organized in such haste. Jeff pulled Lelaine with him, and they sat at the table farthest from the stage. A couple sat down beside them. The young lady who sat beside Jeff said sweetly,
Hi, my name is Jonah Fairweather. Nice to meet you.
When she saw Jeff's face, Jonah stopped speaking abruptly.
It's you, and that peasant is with you.
Jonah had attended a banquet with Jake Adams. She knew that most of the people there were wealthy, and she was very excited to meet them. She wondered to herself,
How on earth did this pair of paupers get themselves invited to the banquet?